Have you ever been scratched by a demon? If you're new here, hi. I usually talk about some pretty scary stuff, and not so recently, I opened an email where anyone who finds this page would be able to send me their ghost stories. I chose this one in particular because it involves something that I've never heard of before, which is a game called Cat Scratch. So let's get into it. This story comes from someone who would like to remain anonymous, and for obvious reasons, I'm going to respect that. And for context purposes, this took place at a sleepover when she was like 13. And everything was going normal. They were having snacks, they were watching movies, and then they got bored around 2 a.m. And it is at this point where the girl who sent me this email says that she wanted to play this game called Cat Scratch. And the girl who sent me this says that she's actually played this game before prior to this incident and nothing happened the first time. So the way this girl describes the game to me is you have to play with two people, the narrator and the player. The narrator is sitting crisscross applesauce on the floor, and the player lays their head down in the narrator's lap. And the narrator goes on to tell the story about a cat, I'll get into what they say, while rubbing the temples of the player. The player's job is to visualize the story that the narrator is telling. I also want to make note before I get a comment about you're not supposed to tell the story. The story is fine unless you're playing the game. And I did write the story down so I could just tell you guys in one take instead of having to clip the video for every sentence I remember. But the story goes like this. There once was an old lady who owned a cat. The cat was very nice. It meowed and purred. One day, the cat got hit by a car and cat scratch, cat scratch, cat scratch. The old lady got a new cat. The cat was very mean. It hissed and clawed. Cat scratch, cat scratch, cat scratch. One day, the cat got hit by a car and the lady decided not to get any more cats. Cat scratch, cat scratch, cat scratch. And I guess there's a second version of the story, but the girl couldn't find it. But I'm assuming it's close to the same story. Anyways, after you are done telling the story, the person who's laying in your lap as the narrator gets up and you're supposed to grab their shirt and like pull them back. And they're immediately supposed to stand up and you're supposed to look at their back. And as this girl is describing this game to her friends, did you hear that? I just went back and listened to the audio to see if I caught it finally, and if you turn the volume all the way up, you can very faintly hear on the video. Anyways, back to the story, sorry. As this girl is describing this game to her friends were like, oh yeah, we've played that before and nothing happened. So they look it up on the internet to like see if it's real, and all the sources are saying, yes, it's real, but it's really just a harmless game to play with your friends. So they decided to play the game. And this is where things get a little scary in my opinion. They decide to play cat scratch in the attic of this girl's house. And it is very important to note that none of them really believed in the paranormal at the time. The first time that they played this game, nothing happened. The girl who sent me this email was acting as the narrator because she knew the game the best. And she personally thinks that the game didn't work the first time because it has to be a completely silent room, and her friends were like giggling and thinking it was fake. They played it a second time, nothing happened, and the girl who sent me this says that she thinks that the reason why it didn't work is because the game was interrupted again. Her phone screen darkened with the story on it and she had to click it, which meant she had to remove her fingers from the temples of the person laying in her lap. I also forgot to mention that the reason why they were doing this in the attic was so that they were able to record this whole experience. On the third try, her friend sits up, the game went uninterrupted, and there are 3 white horizontal lines on her back. And this really freaked them out, so they took a 5-minute breather. So when they come back from their break, the girl who sent me this email was like, hey, I want to be the player instead of the narrator because I want to experience this too. And she says that she specifically moved to another part of the room and they did the cat scratch ritual in another part of the room because she was like, maybe there was something on the floor that was like scratching her back. We don't know. But it is important to note that she did not think this was real. The girl who sent me this says that she was really trying to imagine the story and it felt like she was there. And when she sat up, there was a scratch across her back and all of her friends started freaking out and she started freaking out and demanded them to take a photo of it and show her. And that is when they just left it alone. But whatever was doing that to them was not done. And even when they showed their parents and their friends the footage of them getting scratched and playing this game, nobody believed them. And it wasn't until 5 months later where things really started getting weird. So the girl who sent me this email and her sister were standing in the kitchen And the way that their kitchen is positioned in their home is the windows face out towards the backyard. And in their backyard, they have this garden when all of a sudden, the girl who sent me this says she saw a man walk across the garden and disappear behind the shed. She tells her sister about it, and her sister is freaking out, grabs a kitchen knife, and goes to check the garden out. Middle of the day. She comes back, and there was no one there. This is the part that really scares me. 3 weeks after the garden incident, this girl is laying on her stomach in her bedroom on her phone watching TikTok when all of a sudden these hands start to come around her face like they are going to cover her eyes. And the way that she's describing these hands, it reminds me of charred skin with these long, disgusting nails. And she obviously freaks out. And when she moves, the hands get scared and they pull back, and she turns her lamp on. And when she turns around, she sees this man standing in the corner of her room. And she is staring at this thing for what feels like a minute before turning her lamp on. And the moment the lamp comes on, he's gone. And she proceeds to tell me that she continues to see this man in dark corners or just like little dark places when she's riding her bike home from school, when she's going to the bathroom, when she's anywhere. That is not where this stops though. This girl stays at the friend's house again on Halloween of this year, and they decide to play cat scratch again. And like I was saying earlier, there was a second version that she couldn't find, but it was much scarier. And they both played it twice as the narrator and the player, and were successful both times. Both of them had 3 horizontal scratches on their backs. And the girl who sent me this says that that is when she realized that this was not just a harmless game, and that whatever this game has in it was very powerful. And about a month later, she sleeps over again, but this is in the middle of the day where she's laying on her stomach again, watching TikTok, and out of the corner of her eye, she sees a figure walk in front of the doorway. And her friend was like down in the kitchen getting them snacks or something. And since it had been a pretty long time since anything weird happened, she decided to tell her friend's mom. So she tells her friend's mom, and her mom is like, oh, that's just grandpa. And the mom then goes into detail about how when the grandfather died, they left a lot of money for them to buy the house that they were in. And ever since they bought the house, they have been seeing him a lot. That didn't explain the entity that was in her room with the hat. And she says that she's seen him so often that he doesn't even scare her anymore. And from a personal perspective, I have no idea how people get used to hauntings, because I've seen some stuff, and every time I do or I experience something, it freaks me out every time without fail, even if it is days in a row. But anyways, that's gonna do it for me. Stay tuned for more ghost stories.